Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Q&A session. For those of you guys that haven't seen this before, this is a podcast style video where my channel backers toss me some topics to discuss and then I discuss them. And yeah, we do these once. I'm trying to make them at least once every few months. There have been periods where I go almost a year between them, but this past year I've been able to crank out a few of them, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying that. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just kick it off and start off with a question from Scott Lennox. He says, how would you rank, or do you have any preferences of NES music champions of game soundtracks in terms of the best NES music? Konami, Capcom, or Sunsoft? I think he's asking me like what I prefer between those three companies. Those are some of the best companies for music on the console, for sure. Like Konami, Capcom, Sunsoft, I would definitely put those guys at the very top. As far as who's the best, honestly, I'd probably go with Sunsoft. I know Konami and Capcom probably have like a greater amount of like really good tracks in their games and catchy music and, you know, all-time classics, but Sunsoft, I don't know what the hell they did with the NES sound hardware, but they just really made it sing. Like, everything sounds crisp and big and booming, and on top of that, you've got really catchy music as well, especially like Batman the video game, parts of Gremlins 2, parts of Batman Return of the Joker, and then for me personally, it's Journey to Silius, which is just an amazing soundtrack, start to finish. I love it so much. So, yeah, I mean, there's tons of greats from Konami and Capcom, but I'd have to probably side with Sunsoft as being the champion of NES game soundtracks. Now, there are other composers, like Tim Follin is a really, commonly quoted one. You know, it did a lot of really great stuff, but and there's a couple of other artists that have more of like a UK kind of sound like he did. But I would definitely go with, you know, as far as like a balance between like really high quality and consistency, Sunsoft is definitely, I think, up there. All right, next topic comes from Nihilus. He says, do you have any tips for coping with option paralysis? I feel like it's getting progressively worse. With literal tens of thousands of games at our fingertips, it's becoming harder and harder to commit. Yeah, so I hear this a lot in the retro gaming community. People that have emulators or flash carts or even something like a Mr. FPGA have a really hard time like buckling down and just playing a single game or sticking with the game to the end. And I mean, I guess some people, and I've gone through this too, even when I have like large physical collections, like, you know, 15 years ago, I'd sit and look at my NES cart collection. I think I had like 300 cartridges at the time, and I'd just be like, I don't know what to play. There's just so much to pick from, and I'm not really sure what I'm in the mood for. You know, for that, sometimes you just gotta grab one and just run with it. I would say just pick something, just play it, just start. You know, you gotta take that first step. But you know, we could probably get really philosophical and psychological about this. Like, I was thinking to myself, like, if I'm sitting here, like, and nothing's really standing out to me out of my hundreds of games I've got at my fingertips, like, maybe there's some other issue at play here. Maybe it's not really option paralysis so much as it is, like, maybe I should be doing something different with my life. Like, I thought about that sometimes. I don't know if that's you, Nihilus, or anybody else out there listening, but the option paralysis is definitely an issue, though. And for me, it's just kind of like, I think I've come to terms with, I came to terms with it a long time ago, actually. And what I do is I just intentionally force myself to try games that I don't have as much experience with. Like stuff that's not like Ninja Gaiden or Mega Man or Castlevania or Doom or whatever. Like, you know, I'll be like, oh, Cycross on NES. Yeah, let me force myself to play this and give it a shot and experience something new that I don't really have a lot of experience with. And a lot of times I end up coming out of it like having had a good time. And so yeah, kind of forcing yourself to pick something, I think is a way of dealing with option paralysis. But yeah, I can't really think of like really other other ways to cope with it. If anybody listening has any tips that they use to deal with this issue, definitely post a comment down below, and that would be an interesting discussion. I'd be curious to hear how you guys deal with that. But myself personally, it's just I just gotta force myself to just pick something and roll with it. I mean, I think it's easier for me now because like I run a YouTube channel that's focused on retro games, and so I can be like, I need to do something if I want to keep my channel moving forward. Like I have to pick something, I have to practice something, I have to play something, or otherwise I've got nothing to cover. So I think that helps too. I would not say start a YouTube channel about retro video games. I don't think that's a solution for everybody. I think that's a solution that I just kind of stumbled upon. But yeah, be curious to hear what you guys have to say about this subject. Next topic comes from Talus Barrows, a longtime viewer and listener. Hope you're doing well, Talus. He says, "Hey Austin, we're getting older with each passing day. Do you feel your reactions and accuracy are getting worse over time, or is that not an issue? Regardless of your answer, do you think that might be a problem in the future?" Right now, it's not a problem for me, thankfully. I do fear that it will be a problem eventually. I don't know when that eventually will be. Maybe when I'm 80 or not. I don't know. There's that story of an old grandma in Japan from years back where she would like play Bomberman on NES or Famicom every single day. And I mean, Bomberman's not exactly like, it's not like a Ninja Gaiden or whatever, or Mega Man, where it's like a lot of fast eye-hand coordination being required. But still, I mean, she was able to do it. She was like 90 or something like that. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I do worry about it, but right now, honestly, my fingers are sore a lot, and I think that's just part of like my health issues. But I still don't really seem to have any issues like dodging stuff or like button mashing. Like if you watch some of my more recent NES streams, like with Contra and stuff like that, you can see I'm just button mashing like crazy, and like that doesn't hurt my hands. So although I do think a lot of it too, it's almost kind of like playing a musical instrument, where once you get like a rhythm and timing down, it feels like there's a lot less force you have to apply with your fingers. Like that muscle memory and that timing is just there, and you just do it. You don't, you're not like stressing your hands as much as like I think a lot of people think you actually do, but I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, right now, I mean, in a way, my reactions might actually be getting better over time just through practice and whatnot. Well, I think in a lot of cases, there are some cases, like if I go back and I say play an old arena FPS, like Quake 3 or Unreal Tournaments, I don't think I'm quite as sharp as I used to be when I was like in my late teens and early 20s. But there are some things that I've learned over the years through just experience that I think help me like figure things out faster, help me focus on what to aim for faster, and I just have a different thought process now about everything, and I think that actually has raised my game overall. While I might not be as quick to like, do a quick 180 and like railgun someone as they're flying across the arena, like a mile away, in like a split second. Like maybe I can't really do that anymore, but like a lot of like the strategy and just the thought of like, okay, where do I go next? Where do I need to position myself? I think I'm probably actually better at these days, and I think that helps mitigate potential differences now in my eye-hand coordination in reflexes versus 20 years ago or whatever. So this is another topic I'm very curious to hear other people's thoughts on, because we're all aging. So I'm very curious to see and hear who currently has issues with eye-hand coordination when they, back in the day, maybe did not. So, yeah. Great topic, Talus. Much appreciated. All right, the next topic comes from Crestline Iceberg. He says, in your experience with playing games, what would make for a great mod in a game? I actually thought about this one, Crestline, and I was like, man, I'm kind of coming up empty-handed because there are so many great mods out there already, especially when we go to like PC first-person shooters. Things like all the Doom mods out there are insane. I mean, there are Doom mods where like it turns everything medieval, and you get like experience points and stuff like that, and you'll upgrade weapons through doing that. And there's there's a lot of mods like that are just pretty wild and pretty fun. You've got console mods mods for console games, you know, even like some of the ones I played recently on my channel, like the Metroid SA1 hack for, MSU1 hack, not SA1, for Super Nintendo, where it adds CD music and it adds a map overlay and stuff like that. You know, quality of life improvements, basically. Like, mods like that are really awesome. But, like, what would make a good mod in my eyes? Man, there are so many out there now that I don't know, really. One mod I will say I was kind of bummed about a long time ago, probably 6-7 years ago by this point, is there was a Mega Man 1 mod for Doom, and it looked really, really cool. The problem is it was multiplayer only. There was no single player component, and I was like, if I could like go through a Mega Man game in the Doom engine, I think that would be really fun. Like, that would be a great mod in my opinion. I'm actually really surprised they didn't make it a single player campaign. That could just, you know, has the potential to be just a lot of fun, but you know, I'd like to see stuff like that. I think that would be a great kind of mod, something like that. So there was a Castlevania mod for Doom, and that was pretty cool. I don't know if I'd say it was great, but you know, because it did feel a little weird. But I actually have a stream archive of that on my channel here. But like, seeing something like that with doing like Mega Man would be pretty neat. But man, I'm trying to think of like other ideas, and I'm drawing blanks, Crestline. So I apologize for that. But if you guys have any ideas for cool mods, post them down below. I'd be curious to hear what your ideal mod for a game would be like. Alright, so this is our last topic for this video. I know it was kind of a short one, but I really appreciate everybody, you know, tossing me some questions and topics, and because without those, we actually wouldn't have these videos. So, but yeah, this is a long one from Barone, and he says, one of the highlights of your gameplay comments has always been how much you can analyze and draw comparisons between games from different platforms, generations, and even genres. With that in mind, I'd like to ask the following. Each console generation tends to be shaped by the leading platform. So if we think about the third generation console games, they will likely have a lot of influence from what the NES and its library and hardware strengths and its target audience stood for. Going to the fourth generation, aka Genesis, Super Nintendo, PC Engine, etc., they ended up dominating, but while they received several sequels, upports, and remasters of NES games, think like Castlevania 4 or Super Adventure Island or something like that, things were different. Being someone who knows well and enjoys the NES library a lot, I do, thank you, in your opinion, which of the elements, be it game/level design, core gameplay, etc., that got lost and undermined when you compare the fourth generation games, including the PC Engine, to the third generation ones? So basically we're comparing Genesis, Super Nintendo to NES, Master System, and whatnot. Also, what are the things that you loved about some NES games that you just couldn't really find in the fourth generation games? So I don't want to say things really got lost or undermined with that evolution from the 8 to 16-bit era. I think things just evolved in like a natural direction. Things definitely changed. So I was thinking about this briefly earlier, and one of the core elements of 8-bit games is that they weren't as like organic as the 16-bit generation allowed. I think it was just a lot of, you know, lack of processing power and whatnot, you know, lack of ability to do like more complex math calculations and so on and so forth, you know. So if you look at something like even Super Mario Brothers 3, or say like Kirby's Adventure, really amazing games, really impressive for the hardware. You'll notice that like it's a lot of flat platforms, and then Mario 3 introduced the, oh, you can slide down a hill, but that hill's always at like a 45-degree angle, you know, so, and there's no like, you know, circular ridge at the top of the hill. It's just kind of like flat, and then boom, 45-degree angle. Kirby's very much the same way. And, you know, those were actually really impressive features back then, but on these 8-bit games, typically it was like maybe you'd be able to move in like 8 cardinal directions, but that would be it. There'd be like nothing in between. Whereas you look at something like, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and you can, it feels just a little more organic with how your movement works. Or you play Super Castlevania 4, and yeah, you can whip in 8 directions. That's actually kind of similar to how something like that would occur on an 8-bit game. But you could also hold it and then fling it around, and it like flows in the air and stuff like that. And that's something that you just really never saw on the 8-bit platforms. A lot more 16-bit games had more like inertia and stuff like that. Kind of like the original Super Mario Brothers and Mario 3 in particular. Obviously, and Mario 2, Kirby, so on and so forth. But those games were kind of outliers on the NES. There weren't a lot of games on the console that had you like kind of slipping and sliding around. It would take time to slow down after a run, or it would take time to build up to a run. That sort of stuff I think was a lot more common on 16-bit games. And so you ended up having these experiences that just felt more organic. Again, Link to the Past is a great example. No longer are you just attacking in 4 directions like the original Zelda, or just straightforward like in Zelda 2. Like, you can charge up and you've got a 360 degree attack, and it feels, there's so many frames of animation on it, it feels so smooth and it feels good, and it, 16-bit stuff feels less rigid. If there was one thing I would probably say that defined the 8-bit era, it was the rigidness of the games. They were, it's older generation, and especially if you're talking like earlier NES games that don't have the more advanced mappers and stuff like that, a lot of those games were very, very rigid and not very organic feeling at all. So, Barone says, again, like, what are things that you loved about NES games that you couldn't really find in the 4th generation? I would say the more simplistic, snappy, super tight gameplay. Again, a lot of stuff tried to feel more organic in the 16-bit era. So many more animation frames. You'd have more wind-up on attacks in certain action games. You look at something like Ninja Gaiden and then compare it to Hagane or something like that. Like, they feel like night and day. They feel totally different. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but one thing I do love about NES in particular, you found this less so on Master System. A lot of SMS games had just wonky hitboxes and not very good, feedback on collision and stuff like that. So, like, there's some games on SMS where you'd hit an enemy and, like, no sound is made, so you don't even know if you're doing damage, and then all of a sudden, like, the enemy dies, and it's just, but on NES, there's a lot of, like, really snappy experiences. Like, I just love how, say, like, the original Castlevania feels, or the tightness of Mega Man 2 in particular, or the extreme snappiness of the first Ninja Gaiden. Technically Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are very, very snappy games on NES. Ninja Gaiden 3 is too, but they slow down the movement speed a lot, and your attack speed just feels a tiny bit slower, so there's like a little more weight to it, and it doesn't feel as good. But like Ninja Gaiden 1 in particular, like, you can jump towards an enemy, like, smack that button at just the right time, and that enemy's dead before your sword even comes out. It's like the hitbox is just active, and so you can just get insane, like, precise, like, almost perfect frame timing, and it feels so good as you're just, like, jumping and slashing through things in that game. And there wasn't as much of that during the 16-bit era. Like, just that raw, snappy feel you just didn't see as often. There are exceptions, obviously, during that era, but again, everything was bigger, more bombastic, more animated, and more fluid, naturally. And there was I think inertia and stuff like that was a little more common. So yeah, it just felt different during that era. But yeah, I hope that kind of addresses that topic. 16-bit generation was amazing. I'm so glad I was able to live through that. Like, the Super Nintendo came out when I was only 8 years old, and I got to play it, like, right when it came out. One of my best friends got one. I wouldn't get one for 3 years, unfortunately, but not unfortunately. I'm still glad I got it when I did, because you know, it was an amazing console, one of my most played consoles of all time, probably. You know, even a few years after it came out, it was still amazing, and it still is amazing. I mean, same with Genesis. I got a Genesis a couple years later, and just experiencing both those libraries pretty heavily, along with the TurboGrafx and PC Engine, which I got after the Genesis and Sega CD. You know, it was definitely a really cool time to be a gamer. Like, the evolutions of, like Barone said, the remasters, and like one of the big ones for me was Castlevania 4. You know, that was basically a retelling of the first Castlevania, which Konami's done multiple times now. And it was just bigger and flashier, and honestly, at the time, more fun than ever before. Like, it was such an upgrade over what we got on the NES that the differences in like feel and stuff like that, we weren't like, oh god, it doesn't feel like the NES game, I don't like this. No, it was like, whoa, this is like new and fresh and crazy cool. Like, I didn't expect like these physics to even be possible like on a game console right now. And it's like, you know, we were just blown away. We were just completely like in awe with just that experience, the upgrade from the 8 to 16-bit platforms. You know, we can kind of go back and you know, there are some like not amazing conversions. Like, a lot of people like to rag on Final Fight on Super Nintendo for a variety of reasons, but when it came out in 1991, that's right, SNES came out in 91 in America, so I technically got it 2 years later. I don't know why I said 1990. But like, even Final Fight, like, yeah, not the best conversion, but in 1991 for a console game, man, it completely tore all my NES beat 'em ups to shreds. It was like night and day. Like, huge sprites compared to like TMNT 2. Yeah, there was no 2-player mode, but man, the upgrade in every other area was just, it was like night and day, like I said. So, I mean, it was such a good time to be a gamer. Like, the evolution, that was the 8 to 16-bit jump was a very big jump, especially if you went from like NES to Super Nintendo. NES to Genesis, I don't think was quite as impressive. Part of it was because the Genesis color palette is much lower than a Super Nintendo color palette. So when I went from NES to Super Nintendo, not only did I get like the huge sprite jump and stuff like that, but I got all the bright, flashy colors and stuff like that. And the Mode 7 zooming was really impressive at the time. I mean, F-Zero, and then the Mode 7 used within certain games, like Super Adventure Island, they'll use it for transitions between certain levels, and you know, it really felt like a massive upgrade. Now, don't get me wrong, the Genesis is still amazing. I'm not knocking it or anything or saying the SNES is better, but from my personal experience, going from the NES to SNES was like a massive jump, you know, thanks to its technological, you know, hardware features and whatnot. Man, I would fall in love with Genesis eventually, though. That's actually, I know this is a totally separate topic, but me falling in love with Genesis is what got me to stop being like a fanboy. I dropped my gamer fanboyism in like 95 or something like that. So, and then I started experimenting with everything I could get my hands on, basically. So, and here we are now, a guy that's owned dozens and dozens of different consoles over the years and experienced much of their libraries in the process. So, but yeah, hopefully that addressed the topic well enough. Barone, thank you so much for that detailed request as well. I always love reading stuff like that, and I appreciate the kind words as well. So, but yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this type of video, the more like the podcasty styles, if you go to my main channel page, there's an actual like podcast tab now. And if you go there, it'll have a playlist of all my Patreon and YouTube channel member backer Q&A sessions. So if you want to go back and sift through these in the past, there's a whole playlist there. This will be added to that playlist, and it should be sorted, I think, newest to oldest. But there are some Q&As that go back like 5, 6, 7 years now. So if you want to hear opinions, Austin opinions from the past, you can go check those out if you have a morbid curiosity. I don't know how well any of those hold up because I haven't listened to them since I edited them, so I have no idea. But yeah, like I said, I'm trying to do these topics more often. So if you are a Patreon backer, or you're a YouTube channel member, or you're one of the few Twitch subscribers that happens to be on my Discord server, you know, watch out for when I post, you know, requests to do videos like these. You know, and also maybe if you're just thinking to yourself, you're having shower thoughts one day, like, what would Austin think about this gaming topic? You know, write it down, and then when it comes time to request topics for these videos, then you're ready. You can just drop it in, you know, a comment on Patreon or whatever, or you can post it on the Discord channel backers only area. So, but yeah. Thanks, guys, again for participating in this. The ones that did, much appreciated. And I guess until the next one, take it easy.